So, you just bought a house. Congratulations. You've got this massive stack of papers, right? But buried in there is one document that's everything. I mean, it's literally the key to your kingdom. We're talking about the deed. So today, let's unlock how these incredibly powerful tools work, specifically right here in Arizona.
I mean, seriously think about this for a second. For most of us, our home is the biggest asset we'll ever own. And the entire proof that you own it, it all comes down to one single legal document. And if you get this wrong, oh boy, the consequences can be huge. So let's make sure we get it right.
Okay, so first things first, we need to clear up a really common misconception. When you get a loan to buy a house in Arizona, that first big deed you sign, it's not actually about buying the house. Nope, it's all about securing the loan. And that's called the deed of trust.
Right, so here's the takeaway. The deed of trust doesn't make you the owner. What it does is it's like a handshake, a very legally binding handshake with your lender. You're basically saying, hey, thanks for the money. And just so you know, if I stop paying my mortgage, you've got a super clear, super fast way to take this house back.
So this whole arrangement, it's like a little three-person play. First, there's you. You're the trustor. Then you've got the lender, the bank. They're the beneficiary, because, well, they're the ones who benefit from getting their money back. And then there's this third person in the middle, the trustee. They're totally neutral. Think of them as the referee who just hangs out on the sidelines. And they don't do anything, unless you either pay off the loan or you stop paying.
So you might be asking, why all this complexity? Why not just use a regular old mortgage, like in the movies? Well, it all comes down to one thing for the lender: speed. See, with a traditional mortgage, if you default, the bank has to take you to court. It takes forever, it costs a ton of money. But a deed of trust, that lets the lender do what's called a trustee sale. No courts needed. It is way faster, and that's exactly why lenders in Arizona love it.
Okay, but let's talk about the happy ending to this story. Fast forward a bunch of years, you've made that very last mortgage payment. Feels great, right? Well, the lender then files something called a deed of reconveyance. That's the magic document. It gets recorded, it officially wipes the lender's claim off your property, and boom, the title is all yours, free and clear. The trustee's job is officially done.
All right, so that's the loan side of things. We've got that locked down. But wait a minute. If the deed of trust is for the lender, what's the document that actually gets the house from the seller to you, the buyer? Well, that's where the conveyance deeds come in. Now, the secret to understanding these different deeds is realizing they're not all created equal. It's not just about them transferring the property. It's all about the promises. The legal term is covenants or warranties that the seller, who we call the grantor, is making to you, the buyer, who we call the grantee. And this chart here lays it all out perfectly. Think of it like a ladder of protection for you, the buyer. At the very top, you've got the general warranty deed. This is the absolute gold standard. The seller is promising you that the title is clean and clear for the entire history of the property. A step down is the special warranty deed. Here, the seller's only guaranteeing the title was clean during the time they owned it. Then we get down to the bargain and sale deed. The promises are getting pretty thin here, and at the very bottom with zero protection, the quitclaim deed. This thing makes no promises at all. It basically says whatever interest I might have in this property, I'm giving it to you. Okay, so we've got deeds for loans, deeds for sales, but what about other life situations? Well, Arizona law has some really smart, specialized deeds that are designed to solve very specific problems, like how to avoid the nightmare of probate court or how to handle Arizona's community property laws. Let's check out two of the most powerful ones. On one hand, you've got the beneficiary deed. This is an incredible estate planning tool. It lets you name a person who will automatically get your house when you die. No lawyers, no courts, no probate. Then, on the other hand, you've got the disclaimer deed. This is usually about getting a loan. See, if one spouse has bad credit, they can sign a disclaimer deed. This lets them officially waive their interest in the house, which can help the other spouse qualify for the loan on their own. Now, if that beneficiary deed sounds interesting to you, you have to pay really close attention to the rules. First off, while you're alive, nothing changes. It's still 100% your house. But, and this is the big one, you have to record that deed with the county before you pass away. If you just sign it and stick it in a drawer, it is completely worthless. And don't worry, you're not locked in. You can change your mind anytime just by recording a new deed. You know, that last point about recording, it brings us to a topic that is absolutely crucial for every single property owner out there: making it official. The simple act of recording your deed is what turns it into an ironclad shield for your ownership. So when you take your deed down to the county recorder's office and they stamp it and put it in the public record, you're doing something really powerful. It's called giving constructive notice.
What that means is the law now assumes that the entire world knows you own that property. Whether anyone's actually looked it up or not, it doesn't matter. It's like you've planted a giant flag on your property that everyone is legally expected to see.
Okay, so what's the big deal if you wait a few days to record? Well, in Arizona, we have what's called a race notice system, and this timeline shows you just how dangerous that can be. So picture this. You've got a crooked seller. On Monday, they sell their property to buyer A. Buyer A pays, gets the deed, but then they get busy. They don't record it. On Tuesday, that same crooked seller sells the exact same property to buyer B, who has no idea about the first sale.
So who owns the house? Well, because buyer B was smart and went straight to the recorder's office on Wednesday, buyer B wins. They own the property. It's crazy, right? Even though buyer A bought it first, their failure to record makes their deed totally void against buyer B, who acted in good faith and, crucially, won the race to the recorder's office. This is the #1 reason you never, ever, ever wait to record a deed.
So that race to the recorder's office is obviously critical for making sure your ownership is legit. But there's another, kind of scary threat that's on the rise: deed fraud. This is where criminals literally try to steal your house out from under you by filing a fake, forged deed.
So, how do you protect yourself? You need to know the red flags. Criminals often target properties that aren't being watched closely, like vacant land or a rental property. Be super suspicious if the seller refuses to meet you, even on a video call, or if they're pushing for a weirdly fast all-cash deal. If they seem to know almost nothing about the house they're supposedly selling, that's a huge warning sign.
And please, don't think that a forged deed is just some paperwork problem you can easily fix. It's way more serious. A really recent Arizona Supreme Court case brought up this terrifying possibility. If a scammer records a forged deed and then they manage to pay the property taxes on your property for 5 straight years, they could potentially gain legal title to your home. The stakes could not be higher.
So let's bring this all home. It really boils down to this. Thinking about the right kind of deed is your shield. It's your first line of defense. But that shield doesn't do you any good if you keep it hidden. Recording that deed, that's your proof. That's what makes your ownership undeniable to the entire world.
This stuff isn't just abstract legal theory. The entire story of your home, its whole legal life, it's all written down in these deeds. So maybe it's time to pull out your own paperwork. After all, do you really know what your property story says?